Well, welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marc-André Pigeon, or Marc-André Pigeon, and I am the director of the Canadian Centre for the Study of Co-operatives. Before we begin today, I want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Treaty 6 land. This is the land of the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and it has been for millennia. It's also the traditional homeland of the Métis. And I always like to say I'm very grateful to work on this land, to share in its bounty and reflect on its beauty. And it is a beautiful day here today in Saskatoon. And also to reaffirm our commitment to the shared, necessary, and important work of reconciliation, both in universities and in the cooperative sector. And that's a nice tie in today to today's talk, conversation. It feels especially meaningful because we're gathered here to learn from our guests, Mary Nirlungayuk, about developing an Indigenous cooperative network. And with that, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes introducing Mary. Mary is, well, we think of her as a legend in the in the cooperative sector, a living legend. But she is formally the corporate secretary, vice president, governance, and member relations at Arctic Cooperatives Limited, which is a fantastic organization in Winnipeg, based in Winnipeg, but anchored in the Arctic. And she has just recently celebrated her 25th work anniversary. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Arctic Co-ops, I alluded to the fact that it's headquartered in Winnipeg, but it's really headquartered, its real heart and soul is in the 33 northern communities where there are retail cooperatives and other businesses served by Arctic co-ops. And those businesses, you can find them anywhere from Nunavut to the Yukon, and even until recently, there was one of the members had a place in northern Saskatchewan. In her role as at Arctic Cooperatives and beyond, Mary has been, I think, and it's no exaggeration to say, a leader and trailblazer, and has gained global recognition for her work in advancing Indigenous governance in the cooperative movement. In fact, for her dedication to the cooperative movement and her work with Indigenous communities, she received the Distinguished Cooperator Award at the Manitoba Cooperative Association banquet back in 2019, those pre-COVID days. And that's an award given to individuals who have made significant contributions to the cooperative movement. More recently, and I remember this very well, this past summer, Mary was the recipient of the Association of Cooperative Educators' inaugural Mary Nirlungayuk Award, and it's clearly an award named after Mary, for board and co-op governance, and it recognizes an individual organization who advances board and distinctly cooperative governance. As a namesake for this award, it's obviously very fitting that Mary would be the inaugural recipient, and it was lovely to meet her and her daughter when she was receiving this award in Montreal. Today, Mary is going to present her work, her recent work, in helping to co-found an international Indigenous cooperative network. And it's roughly, and Mary's going to speak to this in more detail, but it's envisioned as a collaborative platform rooted in Indigenous values aimed at strengthening self-determination, fostering knowledge exchange, and promoting solidarity amongst Indigenous cooperatives worldwide. Mary will share her story about how the idea of the network took root, the importance of the network, and the exciting work that has been accomplished so far, as well as next steps, where the network might be headed. So before we turn things over to Mary, just a very brief word on our co-op conversation series. After Mary's talk, she and I will have a short conversation followed by a breakout into groups, so the discussion groups. We're going to address a question that Mary's seated for us. We'll talk about that later. We always lose a few people at this point, but I also want to encourage people to stick around if they can, because these little breakout conversations are really enriching. They never bad, always good, and always an opportunity to kind of develop new acquaintances, new friends, new connections. Finally, if anyone's experiencing any technical difficulties over the course of this event, you can message Stan Yu, and Stan, please wave to folks.
Everyone.
There we go. And he'll be able to help you out. We are, of course, going to be recording this session, and that link will be shared with anyone who registered for the event. And we'll be doing that sharing after the talk. So that's it for me. Mary, over to you. Really looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, Kuya Nimik, and Mark, tamani tuhi tungahong niyakohi, tan ukahirin yaktaka, kwapakuni kayok tuinak mid, ukiok taktimiutaw tilutataweni. Yung nakakaktuy tamani, ihimagigiaka katikut, tagbuna, tana, ihimagidutiku, ukahirin yakpakut. Thank you, Mark. One of the things is that I know you did your land acknowledgement as an Inuk, growing up in the Arctic region. I'm based in Winnipeg and residing in Territory 1 and acknowledging the land of gathering of ancestral land of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, Dene, and the homeland of Métis Nation. This Treaty 1 land, although it's not from my territory by birth, I live here in deep respect and gratitude. As an Inuk growing up in the Arctic, the land shaped by ice, sea, sky, but wherever we go, we carry our teaching of respect, community, and connection to the land. We all walk gently, listening deeply to act care of the shape of these lands because we serve the community of the indigenous people as we speak. The other thing is that before I begin as well, part of my presentation today of the network for indigenous network that slowly establishing in that sense, Arctic Cooperative was also recognized from the International Cooperative Alliance in the congratulating inception of Arctic Cooperative onto inaugural cooperative heritage as well, cultural heritage that was during International Year of Cooperative, and this was late middle of November that we received this recognition as well. So being an indigenous owned organization and being recognized from internationally, it's a very big honor for myself and Arctic Cooperative to continuously work our way through this particular subject. I am going to do the slide, and I believe Stan is going to start with a slide, and there is a link for there. Thank you, Mike, for that. So you could view that in that sense of the cooperative network. So a couple of things before I begin. So I'm going to touch on Arctic Cooperative and where we serve our members. And so our home office is based in Winnipeg, and the members that we serve are the 33 location. And we can go into the outline of what the presentation is today. So the NAT acknowledgement we've already done there. The outline in this particular one. So I'm probably perhaps going to touch a little bit on the self-determination. It's not part of my presentation, but I want to touch on this, on the culture integrity and economic sovereignty. What's really important growing up in the Arctic and moving south of the resources that Southern Canada, I felt like I joined rest of Canada when I moved to Winnipeg, because that's how much limited resources and focus that is in the Arctic Canada. Not only that, the northern provinces where indigenous communities are, yeah, there's funding going through there, but it's not enough to serve those communities. So Arctic sovereignty and cultural sensitivity tend to be in the back burner of certain things that are happening here in Canada. So I will touch on the history, the governance, how the cooperative support Inuit culture, and the reflection of the challenges we face. Then I'll go into the network itself of the indigenous network that is we touch on started last July. So I'll go on to the next slide. So the members that we serve are in the Arctic region. When we say north, we're kind of talking like northern provinces, but these are really in the Arctic remote communities, anywhere from Greece Fjord. I'm sure you're aware of the community. They're tiny little communities. They're remote, Resolute Bay. Then the Oak Crow. Oak Crow is in the Yukon Territory, and then our members are in the Northwest Territories, as well as way down to Sanikiluaq, which is in the Hudson's Bay East. So, and then we go to Penguiton. So anywhere from there, that's the members. The geographic region is very large territory that we serve, and a lot of air miles, a lot of traveling, and how do we do the business the way we do it. I grew up in the Central Arctic, above the Arctic Circle. So for myself to go from Winnipeg to go home for my visit, I have to actually go west because there is no airline services straight up to Winnipeg. I go west to Calgary or to Edmonton. From there, I go to Yellowknife. I overnight in Yellowknife and I go the Central Arctic. So it takes me about 2 days to get to just still here in Canada. Imagine that is like traveling internationally into the Arctic region. But the members that we serve, and if we had to do business, so imagine just from my perspective, it takes me 2 days. Imagine doing other businesses that takes that long to get to the community. The Hudson's Bay, uh, I'm going to say in the Hudson's Bay West, it takes to Rankin Inlet 2.5 hours. To Iqaluit from Ottawa, it's 2.5 hours. From Edmonton to Yellowknife is 2.5 hour flight. So you could be in the Arctic region within the 2 to 3 hours. Beyond that, it's you have to wait for the next available flight if you're booked in that proper sense. So imagine doing the business in the region. And if we can go to the next slide, where I'm referring to the service and support that we provide to our members in the three territory, 30, 32 independent cooperative, but Arctic Cooperative has an office as well as a business in Iqaluit. And so we serve 33 location. And WISEP Operations, our Canadian Arctic producer, celebrated its 25th year last year. That's a wholesale arm from our producers that we purchase from the Arctic, and they resell them through the market to the gallery. And Arctic Cooperative at the time established, it celebrated its 50 years in 2022. And they, for many years, we've been very lucky with our members supporting Arctic Cooperative that they created 50 years ago. And they continue to support Arctic Cooperative being a service federation. And so significant milestone. And also Arctic Co-op Development Fund, which I'm not going to be touching on today, is also celebrating its 40 years this year. So huge milestone for Indigenous owned organization across the Arctic region. So we serve 3.9 million square kilometers of our support to the region in the Arctic. And just further on to the map, that the next slide in that sense, these are their members' location. So I apologize, they're quite small, and they have the indigenous names in a lot of the region. If I were to say my home community, the co-op name is Kumute, and the Kugaruk name is the community name. And some of the location, over the years, I grew up knowing them as indigenous name. However, over the years, they were converted over to the English term. And then, however, the community started reestablishing and wanting to their traditional names into these. So they continue to have that. One of the recent names, pronunciation, people, it's dear to their heart. And there's one cooperative that is close to my home community. Our organization of Arctic Cooperative used to say Paliajuk. The community said we want a proper pronunciation. So they reestablished themselves and have the original name Paliaruk. There's a little slightly difference there. Paliajuk, we used to pronounce it Juk, but it's Paliaruk. It's a proper pronunciation. So it's really close to people in supporting the member cooperative in the three territory, and the recognition is really significant on their end. So the reason why I put that in there is just that if we're talking about reconciliation in the co-op system, is how to properly support our members, not just from the business side, from the integrity of the proper pronunciation, the recognition of the communities that we serve. And what does Arctic Cooperative do? On the next slide, here is some of the federations offering to our members. We have a joint purchasing in diverse groceries and other merchandising. Imagine doing business in the most remote community that we serve. How do we get products into these locations? We probably are aware internationally, supply chain, internationally here in Canada, this is what we do. It's a majority, the biggest part of our business that is we do is supplying the communities. So if you miss a truck behind your store, what how is the customer feeling? So if there's a flight missing, that's when the items don't get into the community. One of the other products that we provide to our members is accounting services. Arctic Cooperatives does the accounting, anywhere from finance to accounting, tax planning. This is very new to the Arctic region. We do the payroll for the members and do feasibility studies in the business line and planning projects, management capital projects, and financing through Arctic Cooperative Development Fund. That's an arm that actually supports the member cooperative. Without this arm, where can the member cooperative get their financing? So it's celebrated as well, going to be celebrating in 40th anniversary this year. So it's been very successful for our members to support financially from that arm. So these are a couple of many things that we support our members in the Arctic region. On to the next slide. A couple of things that, as much as I talked about it, it's in tax planning, payroll, the benefits. When I first joined the co-op system, I'm going to say 40 years ago. So I was an employee of a member co-op location at one point. And there was no benefit plan to the regular employee. The disparity was great between someone from the community and someone is from the outside the community that is coming to work. So in management position, they would have a tax, they would have a benefit plan, but the community member would not have a benefit plan. That has changed since over the years. The disparity is sometimes there. In the construction department, we assist the designs of construction. Imagine again, how do we ship all these supplies into that region? Well, annual resupply, we have to start actually planning a year ahead to a year and a half in order to for that resupply that is going to be shipping up there. Starting in June, depending on the location, it ends somewhere in October. It's when is the last resupply. Co-op development in some location, if there's we get assisted, we get requested to do co-op development in northern provinces. So we try to assist as much as we can, but it has to be community driven. Arctic Cooperative cannot go into a location and say, yes, we would like to start up a cooperative. It's no different. The community has to support the co-op development in order to be successful. Human resources, board of directors recruitment. We do that assisting the board of directors and training programs. We have online training programs as well as planning assistant in the operation services and advisory. We do a lot of advisory to our member location. And that, again, trying to do that in the Southern Canada to Arctic region, we find a way to manage this. And if we don't manage it, being our members, we hear about it. And I know Mark and Natalie, you've been to our annual meeting, and our members are not shy to speak to us. So they'll let us know where we need to improve as a federation. And if those services are not provided, that we would hear and try to work towards improving our services. The next slide is some of the services that we provide is co-op development, point of sale, procurement, and member public relations. These are the other minor other things that we do provide. I'm going to skip through some of these slides because I want to go to the co-op network before the 20-minute is up. And the next slide is what do we do as a federation against individual needs of each co-op? As we know, working in a cooperative model, independent cooperative, they need to make their own decision. So for focusing on support in that sense, and we know the co-op structure very well. In the individual cooperative board of directors, they have individual board. From that particular controllership, they make their own decision. Making their own decision is also establishing in their own language, their own culture. And the culture and the language spoken is the indigenous languages. So we have to also adapt our own as a federation in order to do that. It's not always easy, but we have to keep that in mind, in the mindset of that it is the community need. Member need, that's another key important one from as a federation to keep that in mind. I am going to skip through the community co-op structure because we know what the co-op model looks like. And board of directors make decision. District support advisor are the advisors to the board of directors and general manager, and then general manager has sub operation in that sense. And very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the inclusion in the indigenous community. Very diverse across the Arctic region. We have Gwich'in in the Yukon region, Dene in the NWT region, the Inuit in the Nunavut community. The environment is very different from region, even by community. No community is the same. And so how do we adapt into that environment? And these are a couple of photos that I show because there are true Inuit in the Arctic region. And I guess growing up, you would know them as Inuit people living in igloo, but we don't live in igloos in the Arctic region anymore. So just to clarify that. Um, the next slide, the other thing is the inclusionness of the hunting. It's a hunting community for survival for good reason. It's a harsh environment and environment in the sense of being part of the community. So if we were to supply products into the community, it has to meet that community need. So let's say if something we were think, oh, this should be a good idea in the Arctic region. Well, the Arctic region is not going to think that that's what's going to work. So we have to adapt our thinking of way of supplying into those communities as well. So harvesting month is very important to the people. There are peak times that we know that there's going to be a peak time that employees in these communities may not necessarily be in the workforce because the Arctic region is a very short window of summer season, the spring season, and the winter comes along, and it can be a very long winter. So hunting is very important to the people. Next slide, please. The other thing is that elders are part of the central point of the Arctic region. So if there's an opening in the community, they're very people want to be part, and young people and elders are the central point. So if there's a community opening, the store opening, people gather and have a gathering of celebration. The next slide is just another photo of another celebration, employees. And this is one of the openings at one of our members' retail store. Next slide into that sense. These are a couple of services that we provide to our members and remote community. Can go on to the next slide. Couple of other things in the retail. So they can be anywhere from a very tiny community, the gas bar services, the hotel, the in-store services in the remote community, and rent units. They could support the health center in the community in some of the most remote region in these places. Next slide. And one of the things that Arctic Cooperative supports in the community donation, Lutsuke is a tiny community. Annually, they come to us for support in doing hide camp for young people. And this is one of the photos that we have in there. So again, us adapting into the environment. How do we, the next slide, how do we, this is a couple of stores, like the stores provides retail from anywhere from retail to hotel, cable services, to fuel distribution. We don't own the fuel, the government owns it, but if the cooperative won the contract, they do the fuel distribution for the community. Some location, not every location have Canada Post services. There's various a small amount, and the Aurora, if there's a hotel, they provide food services to guests for people that are traveling through. Just a couple of examples. As an organization, how do we communicate to these 332 locations? From the governance perspective, because that's my background, and we provide orientation to the member location. We ensure that there's member satisfaction survey, annual report, reported during the annual meeting, and then we provide to our presidents any updates, relationship building, information session that is actually coming up in a couple weeks. That's virtual. These are ways to enhance our communication. Being so vast in the Arctic region, we try to keep a touch points throughout the year. The next slide, please. And here is the network that I here for this particular section of this presentation. So as an Indigenous-owned organization, internationally, we hear about what can we do to support Indigenous communities in their region, the territory. And back in June of this year, being International Year of Cooperative, we felt that Indigenous cooperative can't be left out, because sometimes I noticed sometimes we're kind of an afterthought. Or why don't we include Indigenous perspective? So instead of waiting, we decided that during the conference in Global International Cooperative Alliance, CAS Research Institute that was taking place we felt that this should be part of the network. So it was created in July of last year in Montreal. The next slide. And one of the things is that appreciation, the people that participated during the conference, that we had a gathering, I would say, I'm going to say about 30 people gathered, asked questions of how we could move forward. Everything, it's not always easy. There's always barriers, there's always challenges, and it's something that problem solving is something we thought about. And how do we do that in order to achieve the problems of seeking beyond participation and fostering inspiration of Indigenous community? And one of the things is that approach is over the years I've done presentation, and when it comes to Indigenous cooperative, I hear a lot of barriers many, many times. And that seems to be the stumbling block of moving forward. Well, one of the things is that instead of put that aside, what can we do to move forward? And so these problem solving talks that we had, the groups came up with certain solution, and it has to be Indigenous driven workshop as well. Next slide. An existing co-op network. One of the things is that it has to be a federation. There's I won't attempt to say it in French at all, but I'll say FCNQ in Northern Quebec. They supported 14-member cooperative in Nunavut region, and between us and them, we establish a relationship and opportunities and practices of challenges and we faced. So we try to ensure that we as a federation is the existing cooperative network to try to establish and moving forward where we can support the international cooperative network. So CAST and Judith was part of this as well. She and her colleagues supported us administratively to try to get that from their particular support. And sharing history, there was a great significant interest of wanting to do more for their Indigenous community. And there were people from international in the group, and there were some similarities and there were some differences in certainly from there. But however, moving forward, they felt that this was really needed, especially from the Indigenous perspective. And I think that was the key at the time when we spoke to it, when the gatherings took place. I know there some of you might have been during attending that session in July in Montreal. However, these are the key ones that um, uh, I touch on the network in there, and these were topics. The next slide, we can certainly move on to the next one. Like the vision of the network were addressing common issues. Too often, as Indigenous organization or Indigenous person, Indigenous rights. Very important as Indigenous person is that infringement or from there, it has to be Indigenous driven. Isolation of cooperative, colonial structure, top down. In the community, it's a community driven. That was one of the discussion. Co-op training was also mentioned. Education, cooperative, alternative, government involvement. Um, Government involvement is nice, but who's going to drive that? Is it the government or the community? So that's my difference, subtle difference there. Human resource challenges, finding Indigenous people. That's always common, something that certainly gets touched on significantly. So in saying that, I think towards the end of the presentation, what is the next step? Next step is that unless the system, the network is willing to support this particular next step, focusing on domestic Indigenous cooperative. And I know Mike's here from Cooperative Mutual of Canada. One of the things is that what can we do more so here in Canada supporting Indigenous communities and the cooperative network. And it has to be Indigenous led. From my own experience, when we first did this in July, there was a lot of voices, a lot of people speaking to me what's best for you, this organization, and that was really hard to take. One of the it's hard to take is because you hear a lot of sounds in the background sounds, and one of the things is that I think it's best for you to treat it this way. Well, well, it has to come from an Indigenous perspective. And that's something that Indigenous people seek for. And I think it as an organization to be driven, really focusing in that particular area. I won't speak to the conference that is taking place, but I know it's taking place this year, June 8th. And leave it to Cooperative Mutual of Canada to promote it a bit more on that when it's taking place. And I think towards my end of my presentation, and I'm kind of skimming through this because I know the interest of time and we're going into the breakout room. So I thank you very much. And thank you very much for hearing me out and this presentation today. And I know there was some chatters there, so I'm going to hand it over to Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. This is wonderful, and I feel like we should give you an hour next time. So thank you for that. Oh, I have so many thoughts, but I think I want to make sure we get our breakout in, and then we could come back and maybe address some of the questions in the chat as well. So I'd like to break out for 10 minutes, Stan. So we'll come back at 12:45 in Saskatchewan time. And the questions Mary suggested we address are: how do you support Indigenous cooperatives, I guess, as individuals or as organizations, if that applies? And how is your organization, or you as an individual, I guess, advancing reconciliation efforts? So these are the questions that Mary suggested we talk about. And if you don't recognize the people in your breakout, you can, of course, also introduce yourself. That would be good. So we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll have some more sharing. Over to you, Stan, for breaking note.
All right, breakout room starting right now.
Welcome back. As always, I was lucky to have an invigorating conversation with Remy and Isabel, and It's just fortunate to be broken out with those folks. I'm going to open it up now for conversation. But maybe before I do that, I do want to acknowledge that there was a question from Dean Gagne in there about, and Mary, I'll just throw this one to you, about if you have any First Nation bank branches in your network of co-ops.
If we have First Nation
Bank. So First
bank,
Nation, yeah, if there are any branches of that bank in your
Yeah.
co-ops.
yes, we do. So
Okay.
Arctic Cooperative has a partner with First Nation Bank, and some location. I think we have about, I'm going to say roughly 6 location that has First Nation Bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that question.
Dean, did you have a quick follow-up?
Yeah, just on that, because I'm kind of interesting because I know people at First Nations Bank, and they've called me, several times because we set up a very similar type of structure in Isle of Cross with Arctic Co-op originally, and then it's subsequently moved to Meadow Lake Co-op under Federated. And in setting it up, but we've been having conversations back and forth about, how do we provide financial services with other cooperatives in the north to be able to run them effectively and efficiently, but coming up with alternative models, right? So that was kind of part and parcel of my question. The other component is this on the Indigenous led side, because we've always take the approach that we work with the communities, and then from a credit union point of view or a cooperative point of view, and really meet the needs of the community and structure ourselves in a way that makes sense to the community. But one of the things you said on Indigenous led is and we've seen different models, like there's Median Credit Union in Manitoba, which started out as a Métis credit union, then became Métis and First Nations and so on. Do you restrict, like, are you a closed membership cooperative in the north? Or do you open it to all, because there would be Indigenous and non-Indigenous people within some of those communities, right? So when you set up the cooperative from a membership point of view, is it closed only to Indigenous people, or is it open membership for all?
So the members are individually owned in those communities. So they go through the process. So it's mainly Inuit people in the community. So they would have majority Inuit membership. Anyone that is based and lived in the community that has moved in, they also apply for a membership. So Yellowknife is one of the larger territory. It's mainly non-Indigenous community. So they are in that sense. And if there's membership in other locations that are non-Indigenous, they can certainly apply for a membership. We don't base it on if you're Indigenous or not, because we know that you can't certainly, as a cooperative, deny anyone for being a member. And so there are cooperatives that are non-Indigenous owned. On to question that you have around, do we work with other credit unions? And I'm aware of what you're talking about, of establishing branches and so on, and continue those discussion. And earlier on in the 1990s, so cooperative really didn't want a credit union bank the services in those communities. The biggest barrier was legislation. We heard over and over, legislation is a barrier. So they had to walk away from that model. Then over the years, credit union came back again, then we still have this discussion. And so, but First Nation Bank we partnered with them to have banking services in the community.
Yeah, because one of the things that Innovation did is we became federally
And we have
regulated.
Dwayne from Arctic Cooperative. He can also answer that as well.
I just
So
also want to
Dwayne,
make sure, like Dwayne, jump in, but after that, we have other questions too. I just want to make sure we have time for the other folks. Yeah, thank you, Dean. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, just quickly. One of the major obstacles of financial services is scale. And when we get inquiries about co-op development, oftentimes it's a two-part thing. One is about providing retail services, but close behind it is a lot of Indigenous communities feeling like their residents are being taken advantage of by what's called the we card. It's a it's kind of a closed loop financial, reloadable debit or credit card run by the Northwest Company. So that's why, as Mary alluded to, there's lots of asks over the years around the provision of financial services. It is proving to be a real source of economic leakage from communities. Thanks, Marc-Andre.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. That's fascinating. I can't help but note, before I jump to the next question, that about a year ago, we had a visit from the Indonesian credit union sector, which is largely indigenously run. I had no idea until I got here, but they were very insistent on their indigenous identity and how important the credit unions were for their financial and economic engines there. So just a nice point of connection that might also link back to your efforts around the network, Mary, because they had a substantial, and Robbie Tullis, I don't know if you've met Robbie, Mary, but he's the kind of mover and shaker in that space.
Yeah, so about a little over a year now, we got approached by Malaysian cooperative network, and so to try to see what they can do in their communities. Long distance is a little bit more challenging and trying to keep this momentum going. However, it's a pocket of coming and then it goes away, pockets of coming and then goes away. So that's where we left it there. Yeah.
Sure. So there's a question from Remy here, Mary, about she's curious about your perspectives on how Arctic Co-op's partnership with Nutrition North has affected food security in Arctic communities. Can you speak to that?
I'm going to go over to Dwayne because that's his expertise.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, if that's okay.
How long do we have?
7 minutes.
Okay. There is no question that that the NNC program does take the edge off prices for eligible goods in communities. That being said, it does have some warts, and one of them is it's not indexed for inflation. They talk in riddles like it is, but what it is the total program budget is indexed for inflation, but the individual community subsidy rates are not, and that's what the pricing is based on. So you've got a program that is now in its 15th year, and so you've had 15 years of escalation in the cargo rates that co-ops pay, but you have not had the subsidy rate escalated in the same way. So as a result, the marginal value of the subsidy erodes each and every year. And moreover, where it impacts the most, it's not done equitably. Where it impacts the most is the highest cost communities. And I could go on for a long, long time. There's no question that at the outset, like I can say with certainty, when we got done with the airlines, the first time we didn't have the shackles of the previous program, every community paid less for cargo. But the program hasn't kept up over 15 years.
I feel like this is another co-op conversation. This could be another a lengthy co-op conversation. Also very important, and there's some really interesting policy preventions of this. There was a comment and a question from Michael, I think it's Michael Toy, yeah. I don't know if you want to comment on Michael's comment, Mary, but he basically says that the FNCQ has been also struggling with this financial access issue. Do you have anything you want to share on that, or?
Maybe it's best to stay away because I can't speak on behalf of FCNQ.
Fair enough.
I know, yeah.
Go ahead. So if there are any other questions looming, I have one, Mary, that I'm kind of burning to ask, which is that the Arctic has become a hot topic of late because of national security kind of considerations, and I'm wondering if that has bubbled up into your world. Is that showing up in any way in the Arctic co-op world? That conversation about national, sovereignty and Arctic.
Yeah, what's interesting, this is just my perspective in the growing up in the Arctic. We've been hearing about Arctic sovereignty for as long as I can remember. And it's like in peaks and valleys and depending on the government of the day. And there's a priority that needs to be focused in the Arctic around sovereignty. Goes away like anything else, comes back again when there's a new government in place. And then this time it seems like they are going to invest into the Arctic region around the sovereignty and things. So it looks promising that they will do what they're saying. And certainly we're keeping an eye on it as a federation and what's going to happen in the community. So yeah, I'll leave it there. But I understand there was a question about supporting Indigenous cooperative and how your reconciliation, advancing reconciliation efforts. So what's interesting, our members are Indigenous people. We've done it from the get-go. We work with the Indigenous communities, and reconciliation is part of our everyday life that we work. Here at the office in Winnipeg, we could certainly do more around reconciliation to the member cooperative in the region, and we are focusing on it this year in 2026. So this is going to be one of our priorities as an organization for reconciliation.
All right, so I'm going to make one last call for questions. We have 3 minutes, so we have time for one more quick question. If anyone has anything they want to ask Mary about.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dean.
Jean-Marc or Marc-Andre. Jean-Marc, I was thinking of somebody else, sorry. One of the things that, we've seen in the South, right, in the provincial realm is with federated co-op, they have been working with First Nations and setting up basically, grocery stores, convenience stores, gas stations, etc. on nation. All the products are from federated, but they operate as First Nation owned businesses. And so they've taken a slightly different stance as opposed to creating a cooperative on the nation. They've taken a different kind of approach to how they work with First Nations, particularly in Western Canada. What are your views on that? Is it in your opinion better to set up a cooperative within the community, or to do it the way that Federated seems to be working with the First Nations, at least in Saskatchewan?
Well, I'm hoping, and I don't know enough about it. I'm aware of it, that they're establishing into the First Nations community. I can't speak for Saskatchewan and where they're establishing their location, but maybe they have worked with the community in that region and partnering with the First Nation people. That's what I'm hoping, because there's nothing worse than it's no different from a corporate structure, setting up an organization or a certain from there. But if they're doing work with the Indigenous people, that's a good thing. Partner with the Indigenous and First Nation people, it's a good thing, because the people in that region should really be benefiting in a cooperative model as well. So
Thank
yeah.
you, Mary. It looks like Dwayne had a hot pursuit there. Dwayne, do you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, in a lot of the discussions, and much like Mary, I don't have a ton of visibility on what exactly Federated is doing outside of a supply and a rebate agreement. But in a lot of the co-op development discussions, the incoming inquiries that we get, there's a lot of desire for, like, many communities have seen the experience of the banned store, where it's great for a period of time and then a key person leaves and bills don't get paid, the shelves are empty, and it just kind of is a little bit ditch to ditch. And many of the folks that inquire with us are looking for the value in the capacity building and the support of things like member accounting. So there's a little bit of assistance with ensuring that good governance practices are in place, so that the store isn't just good while person X is managing it, but there is basically a net that helps ensure that it's sustainable, and it can ride the ebbs and flows of whether it's activity in a local economy, whether it's proficiency with a local manager, and do it in such a way that there's true community involvement, capacity building from a local governance perspective. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's great. I love that capacity building. Thank you so much to everyone for attending today. Thank you, Mary, above all, for taking some time and sharing with us. Gratitude, much gratitude. I'd like to thank, just take this opportunity to, oh, also, by the way, there's a, Mary, just, you'll have to check with the chat. There's a lot of nice words going there. I'd also like to take this opportunity to just draw your attention to our upcoming talk. It's going to feature Nathalie Villemur, and she is the Executive Director of Réseau d'Investissement Social du Québec, or RISC, and it is a organization devoted to growing social enterprises through offering accessible financial tools that are available to social enterprises at their different phases of development. Quebec has a very well, comparatively speaking anyway, has a very well-developed model of financing social economy enterprises, including cooperatives. And so Natalie's going to describe what that looks like in Quebec. And I think there's some relevance to today's conversation coming from this as well. So again, thank you for taking the time to attend today's co-op conversation. We hope to see you again next time. Remember, it's the first Wednesday of every month right through to June. And then we take a break. Take care, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.